Hello, this is Dr. David Billstrom, living the autoimmune lifestyle, self-isolating at home today. So today I want to tell you how we could save half the people from dying who are on the ventilators from the SARS COVID-19 now, or all the people who are going to still end up on ventilators now. So half the people we might be able to save from dying with this information. So please, please, please pass on this information. If you're somebody who's fortunate enough, not yourself, a loved one or a family member, to get bad enough to be in the hospital and on a ventilator, then fantastic. But please pass this on, because there's plenty of people whose loved ones and family members are on ventilators or will become on ventilators, and they would love this information. And maybe the information gets some of the doctors, but the patients and the families can share this information with the doctors. So what I want to start with is that we have been here before. SARS, COVID-19, SARS is SARS, sudden acute respiratory syndrome. That's when the lungs get so bad they go to the hospital, and when they get on the ventilators. There was a SARS coronavirus pandemic in 2003 also. It just wasn't as bad of a bug as the SARS COVID-19. Now, how bad is it to end up on a ventilator? Well, JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, published some of the first data on how bad it is. There was this large group of people in Seattle who were the first ones on the ventilators. They followed them for 2 weeks. In only 2 weeks, half of the people were dead that were on the ventilators. Another 20% were still on the ventilators. Terrible if it gets bad enough to be on the ventilator. Now, 2019, in the Iranian Journal of Pharmacological Research, people on ventilators, they gave 300,000 IU of vitamin D, intramuscular injection into the muscle. They saw a 50% reduction in the death rates. Half the people were saved from dying with one dose of vitamin D. Also, the average time on the ventilators for these very sick people on ventilators was 10 days less who got the vitamin D. Imagine if something we could do that's already in the hospital, this is a medicine, vitamin D, already in the hospitals, already in the formulary, it's already sitting in the pharmacy, that could decrease deaths by 50% and decrease the amount of time on ventilators by 10 days. With the ventilator shortage, imagine if they had 10 more days of ventilators freed up for every patient that had to be on the ventilator, how profoundly impactful that would be. Now, 50,000 IU vitamin D is just the regular old dose you get with the vitamin D capsule with a prescription vitamin D brand. So you're basically using 6 capsules worth to equal the 300,000, so it's not really that much. We oftentimes use 50,000 for days on end. Well, 7 days if somebody's really vitamin deficient and really feeling bad, because it's such a great anti-inflammatory. Now, what about 2 doses of 300,000? Well, now you say, well, that might be getting too high. Well, actually, the science says differently. So here is Journal of Clinical Translational Endocrinology, 2016, ICU patients on ventilators. They gave them in this study 100,000 a day for 5 days straight. So 500,000 IU of vitamin D, just about 2 doses of 300,000. What did they see for vitamin D levels? Well, they saw the vitamin D level of the patients only went up to 55. The ideal levels that we shoot for treating chronic disease and preventing chronic disease are 70 to 80. Some people say 80 to 90, safe levels. Parkinson's patients do best if their vitamin D level is above 100. So here it is. You don't even get up to the ideal levels, and you have a profound positive impact and relatively safe, right? Vitamin D, relatively safe. Now, one thing to know is if you're a family member, somebody on a vent who has a SARS COVID-19, they may say, oh, vitamin D, the FDA has not approved it for this usage. It's approved for other usage, thus you have prescription strength vitamin D. Well, one thing you got to say is, well, I want it to be used off-label. Medications are used a million times a day by doctors all over the country, all over the world, for off-label uses. The FDA approves a medication for specific reasons, but doctors are free to use it off-label, which means you use it for something that the FDA has not approved it for. And what they ask you to do, the FDA, is you're using it for something that is a good reason for using it, for trying it, and it doesn't have a great deal of chance of the side effects. So they want you to use it for something that ideally the potential benefit outweighs the potential negative. And as we know from vitamin D, in the 11,000 plus research articles about vitamin D, it is a relatively very safe intervention overall. And the potential to positively impact somebody on a ventilator with SARS COVID-19 might be huge, the studies, scientific studies would suggest, and with very low side effect potential. Now, I also want to say, they may say, well, there's not great data exactly why it works. Well, in this situation, you're trying to save somebody from dying. That's not really maybe the first thing you should think of, but let me say this. How about the Journal of the Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism? They took patients with very bad lung disease, cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease, where basically the lungs fill up with fluids because of all the inflammation, and they die historically in their 20s, basically by suffocating all these fluids. They drowned in their own fluids. And this article they took and gave vitamin D to these people, and what they saw was that it improved the microbiome of the gut and the microbiome of the lungs, of the airways. Improving microbiome means you build up all the good bugs in a certain position, certain part of the body, and you get rid of the bad bugs in that part of the body. You build up all the warriors trying to fight your battles for you, the good bacteria, and you get rid of the bad dudes that are trying to take you down. Now, the microbiome we have studied greatly. The microbiome of your dominant hand is different than the microbiome of your non-dominant hand. The palm's different than the back of your hand. Your elbow's different than your underarms. So the vitamin D improves the microbiome of the airways. You're building up all the good bugs in the airways trying to fight your battles for you, and you get rid of the bad bugs. Oh, COVID-19, that is a bad bug. You get rid of the bad bugs. So there is data actually about how vitamin D works with the microbiome of the lungs. Now also improving the microbiome of the gut, gets rid of inflammation all over the place, including the lungs. Now please pass on this information, please. This could help save some lives. Even if 100 people's lives were saved by this information, that would be well worth the effort to pass it on. I think the data suggests that it might be better than this. Now, I'm going to do a video in a little while, a couple of videos from now when things kind of quiet down a little bit, about why doctors tend to not use vitamin D much. And it all stems back, I believe, to one case study back in the early 1970s that has gone down in lore, this old wives' tale, and the information gets passed on, or the bad information, the wrong information gets passed on from generation of doctor to generation of doctor. I learned this information in the late 80s, and because the person that told me, my professor, was brilliant, and I thought, well, he wouldn't tell me this if there wasn't scientific data. It all turns out that this information gets passed on from generation to generation of doc, and it's all a case study, an old wives' tale that leads to doctors, I believe even today, not using much vitamin D and not using it in doses that are needed. I think you'll find it fascinating. Take care. Please pass on the info. We'll talk to you later. Bye now.